What's up guys, and welcome back to Gabe Miller Music. Today I'm bringing together the worlds of lo-fi hip-hop and synthwave to try to see if I can combine them harmoniously and to have an added challenge, but also an added benefit. I'm doing it on the Korg Electribe 2. This has got a bunch of stuff it brings to the table that some of the other groove boxes I use don't, and the sound design features of it were super helpful, but also you can't record unquantized, which is kind of important for the groove of lo-fi hip-hop, and I found a few ways around that, and I'll get into that. I've got 3 beats in total that I want to show off and walk you through, so let's start off with the one that I made first. And that's gonna ring out basically forever. So let's go into the individual elements here. This one, for the feel of it, I've just got a bunch of swing on here. I leaned into that swung feel. So nothing particularly out of the ordinary, but I think it works. So let's talk about the drums first. So this is the first reoccurring thing you're gonna see is the effects. I have overdrive on basically every drum in this entire video. So we've got a fairly simple hi-hat, jazz close, east open, some kind of real drum type hi-hats. Both of them have overdrive on them. This really punchy kick, low knock, which I've used multiple times over the course of this project as well. Then this clap, which is crumbles, which it does. That's what I probably would have played if I could do stuff unquantized. I'm gonna come back to the J Dilla feel in a bit because I did manage to achieve it, as you probably heard in the intro. So that's the drums. Now let's move on to synths. This guy rings out forever. In this case, I'm using chord. The main thing giving it its sound is the low pass filter. With IFX on, it's being modulated by the envelope. And then being allowed to ring out for ages. And then bringing this into post, I would probably do some stuff to widen it a bit, a little bit of reverb, and that kind of thing. And also this is just a unisaw. It's basically just a super saw with a filter on it, giving it that effect. And it's also worth noting that I have the bandpass filter active on the actual filter. It's not doing much, but that was my original approach to this sound. I'm going to switch back to this. The bass is super simple. This is a sync sine with a little bit of punch on it, so that transient comes out more. And that just follows what the main chord patch is doing. That kind of does its own thing. This one's fun. Pretty simple on its own. It's just a unison triangle. It's like a super triangle wave. Not much else going on. I think the filter is brought down a little bit, and then the main thing giving it its sound is the bit crusher. This little vocal stab, that is an actual vocal sample, and then I have that running through also the bit crusher. A lot of bit crusher on these sessions as well. And then finally this guy, just going on in the background, also playing a chord. That's the first beat. Fairly simple, but I think pretty effective, and it shows that you kind of can get that synthwave, synth feel with the lo-fi hip-hop groove. The second one strays a bit from lo-fi hip-hop, but the third one really goes full lo-fi hip-hop, and we'll get into that. So this is the second beat. Maybe with a more static kind of chord progression and bass line, this would be a little more kind of old school hip hop. So something like. Something like that. But I chose to go a slightly different direction because I knew this was going to be purely instrumental. Let me unmute everything and start walking you through the individual elements. Some of this is going to be pretty familiar. Short 909 kick with, you guessed it, overdrive. Kind of a breaks snare with, you guessed it, overdrive. This guy's fun. This is actually an 808 snare with overdrive. And of course, for this hi-hat, we would be remiss if we didn't add some overdrive. But yeah, I really love the groove I was able to get, and the overdriven nature of that groove is pretty dope. This is a fun patch. So once again, I used chords. You're starting to notice some trends, I'm guessing. This has repeater on it, then the oscillator is being modulated. Hence that little change in a tone. So this is chip try 2, so it's meant for chiptune. So you can hear as it goes through the different steps of essentially this wavetable. And then if it's left to ring out, it eventually just kind of rides on this one sound. Just chills there. Bass is pretty simple. In fact, it's fairly similar to the other one. It's a triangle wave with a good bit of distortion on it. That's one of my favorite bass sounds to come out of this device. I love this patch that I was able to create. Let me actually mute everything else so you can hear it on its own in all its synthy glory. Once again, that's on chord. So there's already a bit of filter movement in this supersaw. But the big thing giving it its sound is the phaser LFO1 doing its thing. It really kind of brings the futuristic nature of this beat home. And that's basically it for this beat. So finally, the one you've all been waiting for. This one's fun. And this is a bit of a workaround and it comes with its own limitations, but I like that I was actually able to get pretty close to the J Dilla drunken drummer effect. So the key, and some people have said they don't like the way I just go shift and then like switch through this stuff, but it's the easiest for me to remember, requires the least memorization, AKA virtually no memorization. Anyway, I have set the beats to 32, which is as granular as this goes. And what this means is that if I go into the step sequencer, I can nudge stuff forward and backward pretty minutely. It's definitely got a limit to it, but I've got this up to 32, and then I've got the overall tempo pretty high. It's twice what you're actually feeling with this beat, which is why the chord progression is so short. That's the major limitation of this. But what this allows is basically micro steps that I can use to bring the hi-hat a little behind the beat, and most importantly, bring the snare a bit ahead of the beat. So there are two elements going at once here. This is the main snare with copious amounts of overdrive. Same kick from previous beat. So these are the 4 bars here. If this was to be like pretty straight ahead, and I can actually just demonstrate that, it would go here. Boring. One step sooner than you would expect it to. And it's just ahead of the beat enough to work. Anything further and it gets to be a bit much. Like I kind of like that groove, but it doesn't really work with this beat. Everything is kind of set up to be with this. So this is as close to unquantized as it gets. And I've got a similar thing for the clap. And then if I go to the hi-hat, this guy is shifted slightly forward to be slightly behind the beat. So this does a shuffle, and then the snare is slightly ahead of the beat, which is how you get the classic J Dilla sound. Then for those curious, this snare is hoppy. A lot of similar synthesis techniques that you've seen before. This one in particular, another supersaw with a bit crusher on it, and a little bit of high cut filter movement. And that's actually not being modulated by this, it's being modulated by the modulator doing a triangle thing. So it's got that nice kind of evolution to it as it fluctuates slowly. Super simple bass. It's literally just a saw wave with nothing applied to it. And that just works for me. And a couple little plinky elements. So this right here is Chip Try 2 with the bit crusher on it. So I'm really leaning into the video gamey kind of lo-fi aesthetic. This is using the ring delay. So this is just providing basically sound effects. And this is a very simple supersaw. Just pitched kind of high up. And then another chord patch. And I got like a proper tape sound with this thing. So the modulation, that's going to the filter. And then the effect is chorus. Cranked quite a bit. So basically this is phase cancellation happening in the context of basically a vocal pad. You can hear that a little bit. Really brought out aggressively by the chorus. And the chorus is set to be pretty wide, which is what creates that kind of phase cancellation, kind of beating effect. So all together. So those are the 3 beats. This has definitely been a bit of an experiment, and really at its core, it's me leaning into the lo-fi aesthetic of this thing. Yes, some people will say it sounds kind of digital in nature, but to my ears, especially liking really clean, pristine sounds of like the Roland MC101 or even the Novation Circuit, this sounds a lot dirtier and more lo-fi in comparison, for me personally. So by leaning into that, especially with the overdrive and bit crusher, I was able to create, I think, quite a cool vibe and something that does work quite well for lo-fi hip-hop. Now, if I was to go into more synthwave meets lo-fi hip-hop, which is a vibe I really like and would love to explore more, I would probably use a different device. Just because I want more of a human feel, which this can approximate, but to really unlock the kind of drunken drummer style of playing, I would want to go entirely unquantized, or at least have more control over micro steps. But regardless, I think this turned out pretty cool, so thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more music made with the Electribe, you can click or tap up over here, and if you'd like to see more lo-fi hip-hop, you can click or tap down over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit.